All right, welcome everyone. Hello, my name is Lisa Moser. I'm the manager of Julio de Burgos Bookstore here at Taller Puertorriqueño. And I know we might have a lot of people from all over the country that maybe aren't familiar with our bookstore, with Taller. So I'll just tell you a little bit about it. Our bookstore is not just a standalone bookstore, but it's part of the Puerto Rican Cultural Center, Taller Puertorriqueño, located in North Philadelphia. And our mission is to preserve and promote Puerto Rican culture and also all Latin American cultures. And so we have a lot of different programs. We have our after school program, which has a focus on arts and cultural education. We have a youth artist program, an art gallery. We host a lot of student groups and tours. We do neighborhood mural tours. We have a lot of beautiful murals in our neighborhood, as well as hosting different community events. And then we also have our bookstore, the Julio de Burgos bookstore, which is the only bilingual English and Spanish bookstore, not only in Philadelphia, but in the whole tri-state area. Our focus is on Latinx authors with a special emphasis on BIPOC, queer, and women authors as well. So yeah, if you want to learn more about us, you can go to our website, thairpr.org, or check us out on Instagram. And if you're ever in Philadelphia, please stop by and visit. But we were so excited when Sandra reached out about hosting a virtual launch for this amazing anthology because it is right within our focus and our mission. So I'm going to hand it over to Sandra right now, and the rest of the panelists. Okay, yeah, you can go ahead, Sandra. I'm gonna mute myself now.
Awesome. Hi, everybody. And thank you so much, Lisa. Thank you to Julia de Burgos Bookstore and all of the NPR for having us. This is, it's been such a fabulous launch week already, and I'm so excited to be here, with David and Saraciea and NoNieqa to just keep chatting because we chat a little bit on Tuesday, and I was like, yes, we're gonna keep, chatting about our stories. I'm gonna ask you guys more nitty-gritty questions about all of them. So that was really exciting for me. For anybody who's not familiar with Relit, it's Relit 16 Latinx remixes of classic stories. It just came out on Tuesday. It features 16 of, the most amazing, freaking amazing Latinx just folks writing out there. And so we're so excited for it to launch. We're going to have just a few questions. And we can start this time. We will start with introductions. So I'm just going to ask everybody if you could just quickly introduce yourselves, a little bit about yourselves and what story you remixed and why you chose that story in particular. And I can start with Saraciea, who's on my left screen.
Hi, everyone. I'm Saraciea. I'm so excited to be a part of this beautiful collection. You might be familiar with Wild Tongues Can't Be Tamed. That was an anthology that I edited, and I have a forthcoming YA horror anthology coming out in April. It's called The Black Girl Survives in this one. So more stories to be read by me if you're interested. But for this beautiful collection here, Relit, I got to write, do a twist on Goldilocks and the Three Bears. So the title of my story is Goldie and the Three Bodies. And I guess the title is a little bit of a spoiler, but you just have to read it and figure out what the twist is.
How about you, Noni?
Hi, so my name is NoNieqa, and I am an educator, and I write books like I pulled some up, Beauty Woke, and the one that is my book baby with Relit, Best Believe, which is about the Tres Hermanas, Puerto Rican activists from the Bronx. And I'm really excited. Well, whoever gets a double birthday. So I found it such a privilege and an honor to be in this. Just like you were saying, the names on this book are people who are incredible, phenomenal artists. So just to be part of this is a life goal, like checking that off the author goals list. I rewrote The Raven, which sounds so arrogant. But I'm like, I taught The Raven for many, many years to students, and I was always intrigued by it because it captures the emotions, I think, of love and of youth. Everything is devastating and everything is powerful and everything is so deeply felt. And so that's why I'm so drawn to this poem by Edgar Allan Poe. I use it as an opportunity for craft to play. I know we'll get into sci-fi and playing with genres with all of us. And I also use it as an opportunity for social justice and to give those kids out there, those queer kids out there who are going through a whole lot right now, a voice. So that's what's so incredible about retelling these classics is we get to take what is so gorgeous about these classics, but bring it forward into current time and current issues. Thank you, Sandra.
Thank you. And then last but not least, David.
Hey, I'm David Bowles. I'm from Deep South Texas, from La Mera Frontera with Mexico. I have written a few books, just a couple, one or two, 36 books, right? Yeah. Since everybody's like, stop, no, let us catch up. What are you doing? My latest is The Prince and the Coyote, the Spanish version, El Príncipe de la Coyote, is coming out in April. And I rewrote Hamlet. So we talk about like being pretentious. Who rewrites Hamlet, right? It's like, okay, David. But I had always like imagined that story, but with Latina characters. And for the longest time, I thought about rewriting it in like the present day, on the border, and I had some really cool ideas about that. But then this opportunity came. Sandra asked me to contribute something. I was like, oh snap! Let me set it in space. I had just written for Zoraida Cordoba's also wonderful anthology, which makes a really good companion to this one, Reclaim the Stars. If you put those next to side by side, oh my god! And then add Saracia's recent anthology as well. Oh my god! We have a glut of amazing anthologies recently, right? And for that one, I had written a sci-fi story and had set it in a universe that I created a long time ago, when I was just like a budding author and was writing science fiction novels that weren't getting published, but I created a whole like world, a whole universe, and so I've begun setting YA stories, future Latina stories in this universe, and it's really, really fun. It's really cool, and so really enjoying it. And so this is a great opportunity to continue to play around in that sandbox and use some of the tropes of sci-fi to say interesting things about identity. It was a lot of fun.
I love that. I always love hearing. I think I mentioned not to but I love hearing everybody's, reasons why they chose the story that they did. It's always so much fun just to hear about it. And so I'm Sandra Proudman. I am the editor of Relit, 69th and extra mixes of classic stories. My story in Relit is called Tesoro. It is a retelling of The Old Man and the Sea, set in a post-apocalyptic. I can never say post-apocalyptic, but it's in a post-apocalyptic future. And instead of taking place in the sea like the original, my story takes place in a desert-filled future where it really follows the story of a girl named Mimi who ends up being the sole provider for her family after her mom gets sick and has to find a tesoro in the desert to bring back home, and all of the misadventures that she has trying to do this. And at the end of the day, my story is really about hopefully, helping teens realize that they can ask for help, and there's always going to be hopefully somebody around you that you can do that with, and not have to shoulder some of the big things that our teens kind of have to grapple with, and all of those things put together. But I'm really excited about this anthology. I'm excited for everybody to finally get a chance to read everybody's freaking amazing stories that I've gotten a chance to read for almost 2 years now. I think over 2 years now. And so the next question that I had for everybody, which we talked about a little bit, and we had a chance to talk about it a little bit on Tuesday as well, is, and yesterday I got on with Olivia and Raquel as well. We were talking about it there too. But it's really the idea of getting a chance to retell these classics, not only to retell classics, but retell them through, either fantasy, science fiction, a horror lens. Can you tell me a little bit about the genre that you chose for your retelling and why you chose it, and kind of, what does it mean to be able to do a retelling, yes, but a retelling in speculative fiction? And this time I'll start with David.
Yeah, so I mean, I use science fiction, and one of the greatest things about science fiction, which I guess is true in general about speculative fiction, but it's the ability to put characters in situations that obviously they wouldn't ever be put in our present day world, or with like the laws of physics that as we understand them now, if you're thinking about fantasy. But for sci-fi, pushing this story ahead 200 years allows me to do things like have artificial intelligence, have automatons, machines like robots that are driven by artificial intelligence, and therefore be able to have somebody's mind imprinted onto a robot. In this case, the character that in the play is Hamlet's father, Hamlet Senior, who has been murdered, and his ghost is lingering around. And by switching this to a sci-fi setting, I get to have the ghost in the machine. Literally, I get to have in this case, or I use the name Horacio, like Horatio, Hamlet's friend, as the name for the father and the son. And the son, Lacho, the nickname for Horacio, is devastated at his father's loss, but then discovers that his father imprinted his personality into a robot because he suspected he was going to be killed. He was investigating the possibility that his brother was betraying him, and that his wife was involved, and so forth. And so it allows me to do this interesting thing where I can walk through what it feels like to be like a teen boy and lose your father, and then get him back, but like transformed in this way. And so much of what we think about when we think about our identity is our bodies. Our bodies have so much to do with who we are. And when you change that, when you remove the flesh that is so key to understanding yourself, or maybe complicates your understanding of yourself, and replace it with the robot, it does add this really interesting layer of nuance to the question of what does it mean to be human, what does it mean to be Latine, to be a man, and so forth. And it's just a way of getting at these interesting questions that we focus on today. What does it mean to be a Latino? Is it the traditional like macho, this, that, and the other thing, or is it more flexible than that? Are we redefining it? And my entire life as like a queer Chicano, I've struggled with my community's ideas of masculinity and so forth. And so this is a way of playing around with those things, while also being able to, because of these sci-fi mechanisms, be able to give a hopeful twist to the ending of Hamlet, which obviously is a tragedy and ends with nearly everybody dead. Spoiler if you haven't read this 500-year-old play, right? And it allows me, because I don't want a Latina sci-fi story to end in tragedy. I want it to have some kind of uplifting, hopeful thing. So the mechanism of personality transfer allows my Hamlet, Lacho, to be able to find a way around death, and for him and his girlfriend Ophelia to get around like her death in the play as well, by making her have more agency and be more part of Hamlet's machination. So sci-fi really lends itself to doing those kinds of things. And I also get to play around with all the stuff that I love, which is, anybody who knows me knows that I love languages. And so like projecting Spanish into the future and trying to figure out what it would look like, in 200 years spoken on Mars, and what our people call themselves, and what would be the interesting divisions in the future that are different from the divisions right now. Because, you go far enough back, and our ancestors were calling themselves different things just a few hundred years ago. And you go back 500 years, and there were no Latinos because that identity didn't exist. So yeah, it's a fun thing to be able to play around with in sci-fi. It like opens that Pandora's box up for me and allows me just to wreak havoc.
I love that. And I remember when I started reading your story the first time, I was like, there's languages in here. My little eyes just like went wide, because it was so cool, to see you play around with that and to see it on the page. And to your point, like everything changes, right? And so to see your vision of the future and how that might be not just in terms of technology, but in terms of like language, it's so cool to see on the page. It really, really was. And then Noni, I'll pass it to you, because your story takes place kind of in space too, in the future for sure. So tell me a little bit more about yours.
I will. I just need to rearrange my cat. Excuse me. I think I love that I'm kind of starting with David's wreaking havoc, because that's just a beautiful segue into what I love to do. Just kind of like how be a disruptor, right? And so being a disruptor is also on the other side of that growth. When you break stuff grows through those cracks, and you have things that are new. And just us being able to, we being able to rather, to go into these genres and to dig deep and to recreate is just something I never would have imagined as a kid. I don't know how you what books you read when you were younger, but I did read a ton of fairy tales, Saricia, that's why your work is, I can't wait till we hear from you. And I was surrounded by sci-fi, and I mentioned this before. My house was filled with sort of this dichotomy of the macho Latino man. I was raised by a single dad, right? But the man who kept a book by his side, who worked really hard and who read all the time, which defied the stereotype and gave me the model that is 100% responsible for why I'm sitting here and why I had permission enough to write anything. So with sci-fi, though, I always felt from what I was seeing that was I don't ever remember seeing Latinas involved in the craft of that, or being at the forefront of any book that I was reading. So I automatically assume, well, that's not for me. That's not something I can do. And so, when we're making these stories, we're providing keys. Every story, like when you wrote The Old Man and the Sea and Hamlet, we're shedding new light on those stories, but we're giving these kids keys that we're writing for, because we may have adults reading us, but we're writing for the kids. All of us are 100% out for our kids. So we're saying to them, yes, you can do that. First of all, you can read it, because a lot of us didn't feel connected to it because we weren't in those stories, which David just also got into, right? Like, where am I in any of these stories, even if they're great, even if they're incredible? And there were incredible stories, right? But we were absent. But also you can write them. You can invent them. And this is something that I'm thinking of as well, because I'm an educator. You can critique them. We create these, we look at these classics like they're like, this canon is like literally like in concrete stone. And if you don't understand them, if you don't present them correctly on tests and evaluations or all this stuff, then you are locked out of academia. You are locked out of success. I mean, I'm just going to get into that again, because that's how I felt. If I didn't have that school reading list done, how was I supposed to be successful? And I think for all of us here, we know being successful means a very different thing for Latino people than it does for someone of a dominant culture. Okay. So getting back to this story and digging into it, like, I, as an adult at this age, was the first time I thought, oh, I can try that. I can do that. I had mentioned Donna Higuera as somebody who gave me permission for that, to say, hey, we can do sci-fi. And as far as the specific craft of it, first of all, I did a lot of experimental stuff. And I have to say, there is a reason why we need Latina editors, because look at what you did for us and allowing us to play and helping us to shape things that are super complicated. I mean, come on, we're rewriting Goldilocks is hundreds and hundreds of years old, right? And it's scary to rewrite something that's been on you. Like, no, I'm going to do it fresh, right? I'm going to give you something else. That's scary. And then also, like we said, with the Raver and Edgar Allan Poe and things like that, for you as an editor to say, okay, these are the way you're going to do this. All right, let me help you a little bit, because mine is intergenerational. Mine goes from sort of like, Star Trek with the star date at the beginning. I have each section off with where they are in outer space, because where they are in the whole scheme of things matters. And also because I'm doing mindscapes. So this allows me in the craft to give you what their people are thinking, recorded in these little tidbits. And then the poetry in between. And so kind of suturing that, making it streamlined, and landing us in space and putting that queer place on the moon, the place that is evermore, not nevermore. I think in the end is kind of back to what David was saying. It's all about hope. No matter all the things that happen, in the end, spoiler alert, the love is going to win, and it should. That's why, that's what we want the kids to come away with at the end. So
I love that. I love that so much. And you know, I feel like when we talk about all these things, it's like it's remixing and rewriting the history of these stories, but it's also like the history of our people, right? And getting the chance to, like you all were saying, like we should be writing in every single genre for all of our kids, right? And getting the chance to still be doing that. And we talked about Soraya That Go to Us Reclaim the Stars, which was a huge inspiration for Relit, because I saw Soraya That do, and I was like, you know what? That's what I'm gonna do. And hopefully Relit inspires somebody next to be able to say, you know what, this is what I'm gonna do, to write sci-fi, to write fantasy, to write horror, because like the people that came before me have done it and shown me that it can be done. And so I'm going to show the people ahead of me that it can be done as well. And so I love that so much. And just kind of, you know, we get to give things a fresh spin, but we also get to pass the baton, which is so cool. And then Saraciea, you did not write sci-fi or fantasy. So tell us a little bit about what you wrote.
So I've always been obsessed with horror, the gory, just anything really dark. And I love like the grim fairy tales, like those, like it's so dark. Like if y'all know, you know, like these fairy tales are actually dark. They're not like the ones you see on Disney, right? And there was something messed up about my childhood if I'm reading these wonderful, terrifying books. But you know, I've always been obsessed with vampires as well. Like it's something that I wish I could turn into like rewriting every classic. The first time I read Pride and Prejudice and zombies. And so it's not necessarily vampires, but I was like, zombies. Yes, I'm also obsessed with zombies. And I do like Pride and Prejudice. And I read that book and I was like, this is something I would have devoured in, you know, 8th grade, high school, like reading Pride and Prejudice. I would have read it even faster, right? Like I did like the original, but you add in zombies, you add in vampires, you add in like horror elements, I'm into it. And when it came to, you know, Goldilocks, I thought a lot about this white child has the audacity to go into someone else's space and do all of these things. Now, had that been a black child, had that been a brown child, that would not have happened. And so what I tried to do in my story was in the retelling, it's showing that this girl, right, who is a Latina, is afraid. She's afraid of going, you know, going out into the world and having the audacity to do that thing that Goldilocks in the original does, right? And so I wanted to talk about how we shrink ourselves, how we hold in certain things, how we feel like we can't reveal to the world certain secrets about ourselves because we don't know how we will be perceived, right? But throughout the story, she is kind of like trying to hold it all in. She's like, I think I'm good. I want to be out in the world, even though I am a vampire. I don't want to go crazy and start, you know, eating everyone and losing control. But by the time, you know, she makes it to this party, that's what we see. Like it happens, things spiral out of control. And what I want is for young people to, you know, see that it's okay sometimes for you to let loose. Like sometimes you have to do that, otherwise things will just come crashing down on you and you will feel like you're alone. And so Goldie is really close with her cousin. So she has her prima who she hasn't seen in months. So her cousin is like, I know something is up because I haven't seen you. We haven't been out partying. We haven't been hanging out. I know you're keeping something from me. And I've done that as a teen. I've had best friends where I'm like, man, I'm keeping this secret and I want to tell someone, but I can't. Same thing with family members. But it's always nice to have someone in your corner, right? Like you could be going through whatever it is that you're going through, but as long as you have a person that you can lean on, I think that representation is also equally important, because Goldie doesn't come out and say, I'm a vampire, but you know, she does all of these bad things and then she goes to her cousin and she's like, I'm good. Like, you know, let's go party, let's get a little dance on, and let's head home. I'm good. And it's like, oh, I just did something terrible and nobody knows it, but I still have a person who I can feel relieved once I'm in their company. And also, it was just so fun to put the setting in the Bronx, and to just make it very Bronx, from like the huge gold hoop earrings and the red lips. Like I'm obsessed with this story, and I feel like it's not an exact beat to Goldilocks, but I wanted to play around with it in that world and showcase, like, okay, if Goldilocks was a Black or a brown person, right, like she wouldn't have the audacity to do these things. Still very chaotic, right? But if you put a Black Latina person into this setting, they're still going to do the chaotic things, but it's going to be done a little bit differently, right? And so I really, really enjoyed playing around with that.
I love that. I think that was definitely one of the things, that I really noticed, which is how much fun everybody had. And that was like one of the coolest things to see, for me as the editor. Was just, that was like the goal, right? The goal of the anthology was to give everybody just like breath to just have fun, in their genre and in the story that they're retelling. So that's just been so cool to see just everybody do whatever the hell they want. And we had the liberty to do that, which was really cool. Like Megan was amazing, as an editor, to just give us that breath, to just be like, and where I stood my ground and where I could too, of things, and just be like, no, this is what we're gonna do, and everybody's just gonna be able to do, really retell the story the way they want to tell it. And so it's been really, really cool to see, you know, every single one of you do it in different ways. Like David with language, Noni with all of the poetry, Saraciea with like literally all of the gore. I was like, yes, you go, girl. You just like had all the core in there. And so that's been just so much fun. And then, for me, in terms of science fiction, I grew up loving science fiction. When and I grew up writing post-apocalyptic. Like I grew up, writing all of the sci-fi. And of course, when it came time to send it on submission, finally, it was the time where like nobody was buying any sci-fi or anything of that sort. And so for me, it's so special to get to debut in traditional publishing with the science fiction story, because I could have written something completely, I could have gone into contemporary, but I was so stubborn about just sticking it out until something worked with sci-fi or fantasy or whatnot. And so that's been really special, for sure, to just get to write in the genre and just get to have fun with the story, in the way that I kind of imagined it in my head and putting it on the page. And so I'm so happy to hear that everybody had so much fun in the genre, and got the chance to do something, that, except for David's done like everything under the sun, which is freaking incredible. But besides, I feel like a lot of people.
36 books. We got to catch up.
One day.
Now,
But,
come on, slow folks.
Yeah, that's what we feel.
I'm also
like
53, though. I mean, so come on. Right?
now.
I have a few decades on a couple of you. Yeah.
I won't say my age, but I'll just shake my head no. But for
You're
sure,
like, no, David, we're closer than you might imagine.
Yeah.
You're like, you're only have a few decades on Saraciea, not on the rest of us. No,
That's
he's like,
probably
David.
true.
That's
David.
really true.
We're all like old Latinas here, just hanging out.
I know, because sometimes it takes a while to catch up.
Hey,
I
I think that's an important thing for people to know, that you follow your dreams no matter what age it happens at. And, that's there's no shame in that.
Yes, 1,000%.
Yeah, no, for sure. But I think for some people in the anthology, it was the first chance they got a chance to do something speculative, which is really cool. I think for Tori, it was his first YA in general, so it's just been cool just seeing people get a chance to do something that they haven't done before. And
I do have a question for you.
Yeah,
okay. It's such a dynamic list of writers that you have pulled together to be in this wonderful book. And I know there are so many other writers, and as an editor myself, I'm like, man, I want to include everyone, but we don't have the ability to do that. So I would love for you to just talk really quickly about what your process was like to try and wrangle us all together.
Yeah, I mean, of course it was multiple steps, right? Because I really, one of the coolest things when the anthology was acquired was that Stephanie Cohen at Inkyard, who acquired the anthology, didn't get a chance to edit it, but they acquired it. Was that they really recognized like how much effort I did put into not just, putting the anthology together, but really putting as a diverse group as I could. And it was, of course, some of it had to do with who I thought I could approach and who I had on my list of just like in my network, and who I thought would, of course, you start with like some people that you're like, I think this person will say yes. So I'm going to go for like somebody who I think will say yes and I'll feel really good about it. But that I still want to be an anthology. And, it took a lot of list making. It took a lot of like, okay, like candidly, like we need X amount of people who are really well known and New York Times bestsellers. So it's kind of multiple steps, and you kind of have to wrangle different things. And luckily, I felt, when you go on submission, like I felt so good in the list that we had put together. I felt so good about the stories we were retelling, and it just kind of came together. And sometimes it's with something like this. I think sometimes it requires luck, yes, but I felt like the coolest thing was for Stephanie Cohen to be like, this is like the coolest list ever. And for me to be like, you understood like just the like list that was put together. And so that was something that was really cool. But of course it takes weeks of reaching out to people and then waiting to see. And like it takes sometimes it's like weeks of like reaching out to people and seeing who's gonna say yes, seeing maybe you'll get like a few notes, and then you kind of have to like figure out who's next to add to your list. And you could only have like X amount of people too, so it's just like, oh gosh, darn it, and
Yeah.
yeah.
No, but I
So
mean, I think you did a wonderful job. The diversity is super important. It's just so common, or it has been in the past very common when you have a project or a panel or whatever that features Latinas, to have it mainly be, light-skinned Latinas, mostly of Mexican heritage, and maybe a couple of Caribeños thrown in, and like that nonsense. I think we all know that it had to stop, and so it's been refreshing in the last 5 years to see kind of a sea change, and this is definitely one of several anthologies that like deals with that, like grapples with that really, really well, and is really balanced. So kudos to you.
Yay, thank you, and hopefully that answers your question. It
Oh
feels
no,
like
it does.
so long ago too. It's just like, and I think I've talked about it before. Like I have a project management background, so my brain is just like, this is what I got to do, and this is what I got to do, and then we'll get it here, and then we'll get it there.
Honestly, I thought you were gonna say I whipped out my spreadsheets.
I mean, I did have a spreadsheet that was color coded. That was like,
Of course.
passes.
That was the answer I was looking for. I was like, I bet she's gonna say something about a spreadsheet, and then you did. You surprised me, but here we are.
I mean,
there was.
I will ask you the same thing. Do you use spreadsheets?
When I put mine together, I literally looked at a map. I had to look at a map, both of the US, right, where people were descended from, too, as well, because I wanted to make sure that, like you said, that it was a diverse collection, but also just underrepresented stories, like Jasmine Mendez, who, is a Dominicana who's living in Texas. And I was like, I don't know any, I don't know what that looks like. So it was really cool to include, her voice in the collection that I worked on. But that's why I was just curious about your process, because there's so many writers. I'm like, I want to tap this person and this person and this person, but then I started to look at all of these tiny like overlaps and intersectionalities, and I was like, darn it, I kind of already have a voice that can speak to this experience. Let me try and bring in someone else. But yeah, I feel like we could do tons of, and that you could have like a volume 2, a volume 3, a volume 4, and I'm here for it. So just putting that out there, everyone go buy this book so that Sandra can do a volume 2 and bring more writers together, because we need it. I want to see more of us writing, specifically genre. I know on Tuesday we talked a little bit about sci-fi, but horror. I really want more Latina horror books for all ages. Picture book, middle grade, YA, adult. I want it all. I want it all.
And candidly, editors want it too. It's just it's getting those little baby steps, baby steps, baby steps, baby steps, and I think it'll get there. We just gotta get through the baby steps for sure. And that's like the hard
No,
part.
Noni's got to. You've got to have a horror
Yeah,
novel in you.
oh,
I'm sure you do. Come on, right, Noni?
gee, they do.
It's coming out in September.
I did not know this. That
I
is
didn't
Yeah.
know this either.
Yeah, they thought they buried us. It's coming out in
Ooh.
September.
It's so good. I got to read it.
The title's great.
Yes,
Title's
you
great.
did.
I did. I did. I loved it.
That sounds amazing. I want to read it too. I'm gonna try it with our copies available. Look, I'll sidebar later with you.
Yeah, I was a little terrified. David is, it's funny because David was my first ever blurb, really legit blurb from my first book. So he's, oh my God, he knows how much I love him because I was like nobody and no one and nothing. And I didn't think he was going to do it. And he did. And so like sitting here now with him and he's like, I want to read a book of yours is like, blows my mind. But I think what you're gonna like about this is it's set as a script, so the whole thing is a horror movie in a horror movie.
Oh,
so it's
sweet!
It's
Oh,
super
smart.
cool. It's so
Yeah.
good.
I need
Yeah.
this. I need
So
this.
like a hybrid.
So
So it's
good.
hybrid, or is it all script?
It's a hybrid. It's someone who likes to write horror movies. Her name is Yuisa, and she's named after a Taino cacique, actually. And she is going to this school where she is going to be systematically enslaved in the school with debt to the point that she can't ever leave, or they will try to keep her from leaving. And so in this horror movie that becomes the literal horror movie, she has to break out of that. And the only way to break out of it is through writing her own script. So
Yeah, it's
So
so
her-
good.
Her name is Yurisa. Oh my God. Okay, I'll sidebar you on something about that name as well.
yeah, please do. But like I want to get to the horror thing because I think, and also Sandra to this, like, yes to all the things. Like there's no limit, right? There should be anthologies on horror that we're writing in every kind of like hybrid that exists. Horror, sci-fi, horror fairy tales, horror comedy, which
I
you know,
know.
My favorite is horror romance.
horror romance. Yes.
Guess. It's interesting that you say that because Guadalupe Garcia McCall and I are in the middle of writing a vampire horror romance set on the border. Indigenous vampires versus European vampires. It's like what does she say? She always says, "From dusk to dawn meets Romeo and Juliet." Yeah. So.
Stop it! I need to see this book.
I
need to be
know!
the first
I
reader.
wanna
The
see
reader
it.
is me.
Okay, you are jotted down. Yeah, I think
Two of my favorites. Are you kidding me?
Yeah, you're gonna love it. You're gonna love it.
Watch From Dusk Till Dawn okay, I'm gonna.
It's awesome. It's a great. Yeah.
So, but I think this goes to show like it's happening though, right? It's again like those baby steps. Like we have things coming out, which is so exciting, and hopefully they keep coming out more and more and more and more. And for more,
like, can I just getting each other's backs is kind of it too. I mean, when we were talking the other, like at our other thing, so many people were like, I signed down because I knew such and such was in it. You know what I'm saying? You're like, yeah, I want to work with those people, and just we have to pull each other. As someone who, I'm going to just throw this out there, who is not New York Times bestselling. I love my books, but I'm not. To be pulled into this is really important. It matters. So I think that does need to be said. There are lots of different ways to get success. You can have literary success, but that doesn't necessarily always translate to being a New York Times bestseller or whatever. And for us to always remember each other, no matter what stage we're at. So I think, David, what you were saying earlier about how many books you have in all of this, like, I think that we're collectively have to be responsible for the longevity of our careers. Like, look at all these talented people. We want to see this list of people still making books, and in 10 years, and that's stop getting to this. This is the key, because I don't see Relit as something that's going to be like old after that first year. This book could be taught in classrooms for as long as classics exist, So
that's a good thing about anthologies. They're great for classrooms. And, to your point, Noni, this kind of like, solidarity, hermandad, paying it forward kind of thing. It's why, the work of people like Sandra and Saraciea, and Zoraida, other people who take it upon themselves to edit these, anthologies, or like what I'm trying to do with Chispa Comics, where,
Yeah.
creating a venue for Latina writers and illustrators. Like that's what we got to keep doing. So for the longevity of all of our work. And it's true, Noni. I mean, we all write different things, and some of us have niches. Some of us write stuff that's a lot more like popular and broader. And all of it matters. All of it's important, from the books that win a lot of awards to the bestsellers to those that maybe just get critical recognition, and maybe don't sell quite as much. All of them matter. All of them are like bricks in the wall, or in the tower, I guess, that lifts our people up. And so, I mean, yeah, I also want to see Relit 2 and Relit 3 and a whole bunch of other anthologies. So
I know. We gotta tell
everybody
publishing.
who's listening, let's make it happen.
Yes, yes. We'll just all take turns being editors and just like invite each other. That's a good plan.
Yeah.
But I know we're getting close on time. So the last question is really I'm gonna go off of the questions that I sent, but I want to know, I didn't get a chance to ask on Tuesday, or we didn't get a chance to talk about it. I want to know, what is one thing that you want to say to readers about Relit, and also, and then we can end with again who you are, where can people find you, and we talked a little bit about what's next, but tell us what's next for you. And I'll start this time with Noni.
You have to break that question up into parts for the neurodivergent brains. You just said like 6 questions. So I think,
okay.
Give me part A.
Okay, so part A would be, what would you tell, the Latinx reader picking up this book? You're muted.
You're muted.
One thing that comes with classics, I'm talking about like the ones we are still teaching or we grew up with, is this idea that we know that there's truth in there. We know that there's something beautiful to be found. So we say we can work for it. We're going to excavate. We're going to dig deeper. We're going to find layers and layers of meaning. And I want to see that applied towards our books, where sometimes it takes a minute to understand the depth of what you're reading. It isn't something that's fast, and you can read it multiple times and find multiple meanings in our work. And so with what I've written and what we've all written, I want to see people explore the little Easter eggs in there from the actual Raven. I want kids to go read the Raven. It's good. I know that there are teachers out there lighting it up, teaching that well. There are Latinas, there are BIPOC people out there, teachers right now, who are making that work before we made this book. So I want them to try to write their own poetry. And also I want them to just enjoy it. I think the other side of the classic part that we're bringing in that isn't necessarily always there for everybody who is marginalized reading this stuff is, sometimes it's just a love story. Sometimes on the other flip side of that, it's just 2 teenagers who are in love. You can even remove the struggle of these queer kids and the struggles that they do experience in my story, but they're just queer kids who want to kiss. They want to hold hands. They want to go to the beach. They want to go to the star party. That's the part of this story too, is they want to go see Jupiter align with Mars, and they want to just be just kids like anybody else. And so there's also that part of it of the critical stuff is just, hey, we're just writing fun stories, So that's kind of what I'm hoping. I know when I teach this book and I'm yelling about this book everywhere, that our kids will take away. And I also hope they research who's in this book, because we were just talking about diversity, and lots of times I know it's happened to probably Saraciea and David, where people look you up, right? And they're like, who wrote this? Teachers even will make the kids do it. And I want them to see our diversity of backgrounds and faces too, because they're going to go, wait a minute. And they're going to look at writers like Saraciea, Monica Sands, Tori Maldonado, like this kind of thing. And they're going to be like, just blown, because they're going to be like, wait, that literally does look like somebody from my family or me. So the overall Relit message, and again, just going back to my story, Nevermore, it's not nevermore for a reason. We feel like it's nevermore when we're devastated and we're hurt, like these kids. I know they are, because how could you not be when you have family members disowning you, which is what happens in this book, and dead naming you and putting you through this stuff. But what's never more is that behavior, because we are building that village, okay, of people who are like, I got you. I'm sorry that you're not getting gotten by everybody like you deserve, but you are not alone, ever, ever, ever. Yeah. So that's what I'm hoping will go across to some reader who needs it when they read my story.
I love that so much. And then I know you talked a little bit about the horror coming out. Do you have anything else you're working on?
I'm working on so many things. I had talked about Best Believe, which is the first PB bio, and I would love for everyone to check it out, because one thing I know we've all experienced is this idea that there's one hero in our cultures. Maybe there's two, and actually these are three sisters. And I think that that's pretty phenomenal to see that not only is it three amazing sisters, but they all helped each other out. Sandra, getting back to what you were saying with your short story, they did not do it alone. And part of being a hero is to be with your community and go at whatever you're going at, whatever you're fighting for or against, with your community, knowing that you're going to take care of yourself too, and that's what I hope that people get from the PB bio. That's out now.
Yay, I love it. Thank you so much for sharing. And then David, I'll pass it on to you.
Yeah, sure. I mean, yeah, Noni said so many really good things about the book, and there's not much more I could say about it. But I want to see teachers using it to disrupt the text that we're writing about, at least, or to be in conversation with. I think that's really, really important. And for would-be writers to take away from it the permission to do the same thing with their work. I think I want to see a lot of young writers doing the sort of thing. It'd be great. And then what's next for me in June? My second book with Guadalupe Garcia McCall, Hearts of Fire and Snow, comes out, and that's a paranormal romance that is based in the legend of the two volcanoes in Mexico, Popocatépetl and Iztaccíhuatl. And so, I mean, anybody who's seen like a lowrider driving around their town has seen an image of the Aztec warrior carrying the dead princess in his arms. And so that legend, it ends in this really kind of sad way. And we kind of pick up like what happens when eventually the gods agree to bring back the princess, and she's reincarnated as a Chicana living in Reno, Nevada. And Popocatépetl, who has been the god of the volcano for 1,200 years, waiting for her return, has to go find her. So, yeah, it's really, really cool. I think a lot of people are going to love it. So look for that in June from Bloomsbury.
That sounds amazing. I'm so excited. I'm so excited for everybody's stuff. And then Saraciea.
I mean, I agree with everything that's been said, but the one thing I will say is if you're like me and you find some of those classics boring, or if you are a genre nerd, you really need to pick up this book, because I think the most exciting thing is from the ones that I did love when I was a teen reader, it really resonated me. Like I mentioned Pride and Prejudice, right? Which is I feel like I think required reading still for a lot of young people, but to add the zombies to it, I'm like, oh, I would have devoured this in a day instead of spending so much time on it. So I would say, like, if you're needing a break, or even for any educators, if you think that your students just need something fun, like just flip, have them flip open this book and pick a story, and you can read it just to bring some freshness to the classroom. I think it's already been said that anthologies are really great to teach, but I think it's the same for readers. Anthologies are really great for you to pick a story, read it, and then talk about it with your book bestie. So definitely do some buddy reading with it. And then what I have coming up next, I mentioned it in the beginning, but I have that YA horror anthology coming out in April. The Black Girl Survives in this one. If you are a horror fan and you like the final girl trope, but we haven't really had any Black final girls pretty much ever. We've seen it in movies a little bit, but not really in books. And if I'm wrong, if you got recommendations for me, please hit me up on social, SJ_Fennell, because it could be possible. Maybe I missed something. There are a lot of books published, but I personally haven't really seen a lot of Black final girls. And so in that collection, you get all types of horror. There's space horror, gory horror, ghosts, all of it. And the cool thing is, if you're someone who doesn't really like terrible endings, the girl survives at the end. So, you know, at least you know that there's going to be a positive ending. But yeah, that's pretty much all for me. And I just want to thank you really quickly, Sandra, again, for putting together this collection and having me be a part of it, and just for all of your help with editing and upping the ante and all the shenanigans in my story. And I know I mentioned this on Tuesday, but just kind of having the permission to even go there was wonderful. I didn't even know that I was waiting for someone to give me the permission, but you did, and I was able to create something that I cherished so much. So thank you.
Yay, I love it. I love it. No, thank you. I mean, gosh, seriously, like it's been just so cool and such a dream to work with all of you. So thank you. Like I can't even like express it sometimes. Like I really like every single time I read the anthology, I was just like, how did I get this lucky to get a chance to work with so many just amazing people that I've admired for a really long time. And so thank you all for sharing your voices for the anthology. It's been so special and so cool and just incredible. And then, you know, for me, I really, you know, there's I think the estimate is that about, you know, 1 in 4 kids in the United States is Latinx. And so, you know, this anthology, of course, is for everybody, but it's really for them. It's really for all the teens to be able to pick it up and see themselves as the heroes of their own stories in genre fiction, in these classics that need a sometimes a fresh retelling. And so that's really what I want to get out of it. It's like you guys are all heroes and you're amazing, and we're so lucky to have you as our audience. Um, and likewise, I hope all teachers and librarians pick up Relit for their classrooms and for their kids to be able to read it. And then oh, now I can't remember the next. Now I forgot like the next question too. So the next question is just, you know, what do I have next? So next I am doing horror, which is really exciting. So I get to you know the next things that I do, I get to do like the whole trifecta. So this was science fiction. Hi. Sorry, I see kids and my brain is just like there's a kid on the screen. But the next piece that I'm working on is I'm going to be in another horror. I'm going to be not another in a horror anthology edited by Alex Brown that's coming out from Page Street called The House Where Death Lives. It's so cool the way that Alex has set it up. So every story takes place in a different room. And I was one of the last people to join. I was like, oh my God, there's not going to be a good room for me. And I was like, yes, I figured it out. So actually, I'm doing the secret passageways of the house, which surprisingly nobody else had picked. So my story is going to take place in these secret passageways, but it's really like a Squid Game meets escape room as type of story. And so my character has to figure out, wakes up in, you know, this secret passageway and has to figure out how to get out of there, all while battling like a monster AI. So that's coming up. And then next year I have a book coming out from Wednesday Books called Saraciea, which is a story retelling with salt magic. So instead of it's an historical fantasy, and so instead of finding gold, what's actually been discovered in California is magical healing salt. And so it deals a lot with obviously saving a girl rising up and saving her town, but also a lot with colonialism. And so I'm excited to kind of tackle that topic. And that's a little bit about what's coming up next. And I'm so excited for everybody's projects. I'm so excited for the anthology again, Relit, 16 Latinx mixes of classic stories to be available everywhere. And I am so grateful for all of you. And I know we will keep chatting and celebrating and, you know, to David's point, making sure that we're rising everybody up in our community along with us. And so I'm excited for the anthology to be out. I'm grateful for everybody who's picked it out. Pre-order it or not pre-order, order it from you know, Julia de Burgos Bookstore. And if you do order it from there, I believe there's still bookmarks and stickers. It'll come with your book. And thank you so much, Lisa, for having us. And I'll let you close it out.
Yeah, thank you so much, all of you, for this conversation and for your work. I'm so excited for all of these new projects coming out. I can't wait. Yeah, we have the book in stock. We have stickers and bookmarks we can ship all over the country. The link will be in the description if you'd like to order it online. And request it at your local library, review it online, share it on social media. Let's do everything to support this amazing work and spread the word, get it out in the world. Yeah, thank you, everyone.
Oh, thank you all. Talk to you soon.
Go team! Go team! Go team! Go
Go
team! Go
team!